and welcome to This Sustainable Life Untethered, the place where we explore mind, body, and nature and the things that hold us back from enjoying them. I am your host, Alison, and in today's episode, I am delighted to introduce you to the stand-up comedian Alex Love. I invited Alex to come on the show because I think that comedians have a superpower in that they repeatedly put themselves in situations that most people, myself included, try to avoid. For example, public speaking, putting yourself out there to be judged and criticized, getting it wrong, failing in public, looking silly, and confrontation with other people. Comedians do this all the time, and it's part and parcel of their job. Alex has been blogging about these exact things and sharing his journey as a comedian. So I knew that he would be the perfect guest to help us really dive into these negative emotions and figure out how to lessen their power on us so that they don't hold us back from doing the things that we want to do. Check out Alex's blog at alexlove.co.uk, and his Twitter handle is at @thisalexlove. Honestly, I laugh loads reading of his stuff, and I also really enjoyed this conversation in person, and I hope you do too. I am super excited to welcome our amazing guest, Alex Love, today on the podcast. Alex is a stand-up comedian, a freelance writer, and a serial blogger. He has been performing comedy regularly since 2010, and his first solo show, How to Win a Pub Quiz, has sold out a number of times at both the Edinburgh Fringe and New Zealand Fringe festivals. He has also been blogging about his journey since 2011, and his blog is wonderfully honest and hilarious. And full disclosure, I have unashamedly internet stalked him and read a lot of his blog. So welcome, Alex. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Hello, Alison. Thanks for having me on.
A pleasure. So can you explain a bit more about your background and what led you to pursue stand-up comedy?
Well, I'd always enjoyed being on stage, and I did acting at school, but then didn't really do anything with it. I didn't really get involved with drama or anything at university, didn't really do anything outside of school, and then I kind of missed being on stage. And then I thought stand-up comedy was just a way to... I'd always thought about writing a comedy sketch show. I grew up watching things like The Fast Show and Shooting Stars, and so things from the 90s, Big Train as well. So I'd always enjoyed sketch shows. And then when I did GCSE drama, that was kind of everything would just be a comedy sketch. Even if it was meant to be serious, it would always have a comedy twist. And then when I was 15, I had the lead role in a school production of Return to the Forbidden Planet. Have you ever seen that?
No, I have not.
It's a space musical, because basically I was only one of only about 3 boys who was willing to act in it, and I had the lead role by default. But it all counts, and that was great. And the school hall seated about 150, 200, and playing that for laughs, just getting that doing something and getting that massive laugh, just made me really want to pursue that if I could. But yeah, I didn't really do a lot with it until I was at uni, feeling a bit sorry for myself, thinking, what should I do? And I'd kind of always wanted to do... I've been writing stand-up comedy for about 3 years, just stupid jokes and sketch ideas for about 3 years before I eventually took the plunge. Because my first gig was actually in 2005 in Havant Arts Centre, but I didn't really focus on it until I moved up to London at the start of 2010. So my first ever gig was... in front of about 115 people.
That's quite a lot of people for a first gig.
Well, I thought that was normal. I thought every gig would be like that, but it's not. And I've since done gigs in front of about 2 or 3 people. So it's kind of set me up for raise my expectations unrealistically high. But yeah, that was all right. And I was very nervous. I thought it would be similar to acting. I thought I'd just be saying words on stage, but it's a massive world of difference of, you know, everything you say has to, you know, get a laugh when you mean it, when it's meant to. Whereas on stage, you're just reading other people's work a lot of the time. So then I was, not really doing enough, because the thing about stand-up comedy is you need to be doing it regularly. You need to be doing a good few gigs a week to get in your rhythm, find your rhythm. And if you're not doing it regularly, the gigs don't end up going as well. And if you have a bad gig, the best thing to do is to get immediately back on stage and do another one. But if you're not gigging regularly enough, then it kind of weighs on your mind for longer, because you're just not able to exercise your demons. And then I kind of put on hold when I got a job as a reporter for a local newspaper in 2008. And that was just, I wasn't really getting anywhere because I wasn't gigging enough. And working for a local paper just consumed all of my time. And then it was just a really stressful year and a bit. And I ended up, so started 2008, I ended New Year's Eve 2008 in hospital with a broken ankle in Swansea after a pretty ridiculous episode, a very drunken night out. I probably shouldn't go into details about for legal reasons, but I ended up in hospital. And when I was just like the day after that, maybe New Year's Day, maybe January the 2nd, 2009, I just decided that I needed to quit my job. I needed to move to London, and I needed to start thinking more positively about things, because up until that time I had a pretty negative outlook, and in effect in that hospital bed I rewired my brain to think more positively, and it was strange. Are you aware of the hero's journey?
No.
Joseph Campbell. No. It's kind of the structure of a myth, like Star Wars, Lord of the Rings, Rocky as well. They follow the same narrative template, and there are I wrote my dissertation on this. I wrote my dissertation on Star Wars, and got a first. I still enjoy bragging about that almost 15 years later. But there are points in the journey, and one is called birth, rebirth, where you leave your old life behind and take on a new existence. And it's kind of lots of metaphors, particularly in Star Wars. You can also sort of things of birth and rebirth, and being covered in blood in Swansea, that's kind of a rebirth. As I said, it was
and on New Year's Eve as well, like perfect timing.
Yeah, so that was the moment I decided I just needed to actually give it a shot and see if I can actually get anywhere with it.
So you said you rewired your brain in the hospital bed. Can I ask, like, what do you mean by that exactly?
It wasn't a surgical procedure. It was.
Hey, neurologist, come over.
Just get a bit of screwdriver and stick it around in my ear and did some rewiring of my brain. No, it's a psychological thing, because negativity becomes a bit of a trap. Once you're set in a negative mindset, it kind of does affect the way your brain operates. So I don't know if it was a conscious thing, but I just suddenly started to think more positively, because I don't know. Maybe it was the medication. Maybe it was the painkillers. But I just decided. I just suddenly started to feel hopeful, which seems a bit weird when you're in hospital 100 miles from home with a broken ankle and you can't walk for about 8 weeks. But I'm not entirely sure what happened. I just started to feel more optimistic about life, and that was the sort of the catalyst of what set me on my way.
I guess, like, maybe when you have experienced such a difficult situation, and not saying that you were at rock bottom, but certainly to have broken your ankle, to be in hospital so far away from home, etc., would not be ideal. Like, it's easier for things to look more positive going forward. Maybe you're like, well, can it get much worse? I don't know.
Yeah, that's true. And I've left out some key details in that for obvious reasons. Basically I don't come out of it very well. is the short. Yeah, so I broke my ankle. That's do you want to know more details?
If you're willing to share.
Right. Okay, so I was invited to Swansea by a girl that I was dating briefly at the end of uni, and I drove 100 miles because it had been a really stressful year working for a local paper, and it was I was living at home with my parents, really stressed, not enjoying life at all, and that was kind of like the light at the end of the tunnel. I was going to be the start of something hopefully good. And then drove 100 miles, and then she answered the door, and then went into the living room, and the first person I saw in the living room was her boyfriend. So didn't
Oh,
realize that was a thing. It's not
oh,
quite what I thought it was going to be. So then I just got astonishingly drunk, and ended
as
up in
anyone
hospital.
would. Yeah.
Mm. So it was I was kind of burnt out and a bit run down, and that was kind of the thing I thought would be good, but it ended up being awful. And then yeah, it was kind of was rock bottom, and it's difficult to get much lower than than that.
So after that, you said you started thinking more positively and you just felt
Mhm.
more optimistic. What were those next stages that took you more on stage?
Well, I needed to quit my job. That was the main thing holding me back. And I'd actually been carrying my notice around in my bag for a large, a large proportion of my time at the local paper. I was not happy with it, so I was just getting shouted at by my editor on a daily basis, just about small little things. She said she was deliberately going out of her way to give me a hard time. So
That's nice, isn't it? Like,
yeah, exactly what you need is just starting a new career, and someone says, "Yeah, I'm going to give you a really hard time." Okay, great. So then it kind of reached a point. So when I was recovering from my with my broken ankle, I got a phone call from my mum's cousin who worked at the Guardian, and she offered me some. Well, at the time it was a job, because someone on her team was leaving, and she just needed someone, and I was just available. I had some experience, and that's how they do things at the newspaper. It's always who you know. So it ended up being shifts. It didn't end up being a job, but it kind of they were meant to. The newspaper, the local paper, were meant to register me on a reporter trainee scheme. But if I left before I'd finished the scheme, I'd have to pay them for the amount it cost to be put on the scheme. So I somehow managed to cunningly avoid them registering me in the first place, which meant I didn't have anything tying me there. So that was kind of I'd already planned my escape very early on in my time as a reporter. So then it kind of reached a point. My editor was on holiday, and I was going up to London for a week to do some shifts at the Guardian, just production, editing, stuff like that. And then my editor said to me, right, by the time I get back from holiday, you have to register on this course. It's gone long enough. It's gone on long enough. You need to register now. So kind of reached a point where I just had to make a decision, and the Guardian work was kind of sort of there. So I just decided to take my chances and quit my job there and then. And yeah, I left there in June 20 2009, and then 11 days later my dad had a brain hemorrhage.
oh
So
gosh.
2009 was a pretty pretty tough year, but it kind of worked out quite well because I was able to help out. I didn't have a job, so I was able to help out at home and help
Mhm.
with his recovery and stuff. And then after that, I ended up doing in 2009, September 2009, I ended up doing a comedy workshop, like an 8-week comedy workshop by Logan Murray, who's taught various well-known comedians like Rod Gilbert, Holly Walsh, We Are Clang, and various others. And he was really good about just encouraging you to. One of his biggest lessons was lose your editor, like that voice in the back of your mind telling you an idea is terrible. He says, just forget that, just write something. And I lost my editor because I quit my job as a reporter as well. So more
Wait.
one. Also telling me that what I was doing was awful. So
Oh yeah, it's like a perfect like metaphor. Not even a metaphor, it's a literal metaphor.
yeah, so lose your editor, and just if you have an idea, don't give up on it before you've actually tried it out, because I think that's what you can do sometimes. you have an idea and you think, oh, this is terrible, I'm never going to try it out. But unless you try it out in front of an audience, you're never going to know if it works. And I often find ideas that I think I've worked really hard on, and I think this is going to be amazing, this is going to be the one, that sets me off to superstardom. Those ideas end up often not going too well, but it's often the stuff that you don't think is very good, and you just try it out because I'm up here, may as well say it. And that's often the thing that goes better than something you've slaved over for hours. Just a stupid idea that you've written on a scrap of paper just before you're about to go on stage often works much better than stuff you've been writing intricately for weeks before you try it out. So that was about 8 weeks, and I met some really good friends on there as well, who we ended up running a monthly club in London. And then I eventually moved to London properly at the start of 2010, and then I was just gigging about three or four nights a week, sometimes more than that. And I was working, it says on my CV, I was at the Guardian for 2 years. In reality, I was actually getting most of my regular income from the charity call centre. So did that, and then I had to end up getting a full-time job when the Guardian work started drying up due to cutbacks, and that's when things they were fine initially, trying to juggle the full-time job and the comedy. But then when I got promoted again by default and I was a manager, that's kind of when things stopped being so fun, because I had to manage people and had to worry about them and make sure it was their livelihood, so I had to look after them as well. But then I was in London gigging, and then I moved up to Manchester, relocated with a day job in 2016, and I was there for about 3.5 years, and then moved away. I quit my job at the end of July 20. All the years are blurring as one. 20. Was it 2019? The one before last. 2019. And then moved away to go traveling, basically. So, and kind of got stuck back home at my mum's
because of COVID.
Because of COVID, yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually in New Zealand when it all started.
Right. Oh gosh.
Yeah, but I was able to get back. It didn't really affect my trip.
Yeah. So you said that you were acting at school and like doing GCSE drama. Have you always felt comfortable just like being in front of a crowd, public speaking? Do you still feel nerves now before you go on stage? Lots of people try to avoid public speaking as much as possible. Like how do you turn into those nerves? Is there anything that you do?
Nerves, well, the thing about nerves is you shouldn't be afraid of them. Nerves are, somebody said to me once that you're nervous if you care, basically. So nerves show that you care about doing something. I think if you don't feel nervous before if you don't feel the nerves before comedy, then something's wrong, because it is, it's just a massive adrenaline rush. But so what I do before I go on stage is I pace about a lot. And I have to write my set first on some paper, then on my hand. Very rarely look at my hand. But it's just kind of a ritual. I just need it there as a safety net. So it means that if I go off on a tangent and start messing around, then I've got something to just get me back on track. But
right, is this like bullet points or?
Yeah, just bullet points. Yeah, yeah. But yeah, it's a weird ritual, and often pacing, jumping up and down, getting the shoulders relaxed. Or it looks like I'm going into a boxing ring. But it's and it's you can become immune to adrenaline from being on stage, and the more you're doing it, the less aware of it you are. It's only when you've had some time out away from it that you start to feel it again, when it's going through your system.
And you mentioned that you kind of go through the process of like testing out jokes, and in your blog you write that in order to get new material roadworthy, you have to be prepared to go through the ordeal of testing it in front of blank stares. And again, like most people like probably don't have to worry about being funny for a living, but they might have to give presentations at work, and having an ordeal occur in a presentation, you know, where you look like you're not very good, or something embarrassing happens, like that's kind of the stuff that nightmares are made of. So how do you become an ordeal like hunter? You're actively kind of choosing them out, you're seeking them. What are your strategies for dealing with ordeals?
I've not quite been described as that before, but I suppose it's I think you can be afraid of failure. I think but I don't think you should be, because failure is healthy. You can learn a lot more from failure than success. And obviously you don't want to get too skillful at failures, because but if you can learn from them, basically failures force you to learn. And if something goes badly, I think it's an evolutionary thing. You learn more from a negative experience than you do from a positive one, because if something's, particularly with stand-up, if something's going as you'd written it, if something does well, then all you've really learned that exactly what you knew already. You haven't really learned anything, because you knew it was going to be good, because of course, because I've written it, so of course it's going to be good. But it's when something goes badly, sometimes I think it can be very tempting just to completely abandon the idea. But if you believe it's funny, you have to kind of keep chipping away at it, and maybe presenting it in a slightly different way. Maybe what you were doing wasn't quite the best way of delivering it. You have to look at it more closely once it goes badly. So it's it's fine to fail, but as long as you learn from failures, then that's really the most important thing.
Do you have a process for this chipping away or from learning? Because you know, like what's your method after something negative has happened? Like, how do you come to the next bit where you think, okay, well, I'm going to try this next time?
You start going, well, you often, what you should do is record every gig and then listen to it back, because I went through a phase of being really good at recording gigs, but really bad at listening to it back.
Yes.
Because even sometimes just listening to it back, and even if it doesn't go well, you'll think of something. So you'll connect one thing to another. You'll think of another way of doing it differently that you may not have done before if you hadn't listened to it back. And sometimes if you think it's a bad gig and you listen to it back, you realize maybe it's not so bad. It's always worse in your head than well, not always worse in your head, but sometimes.
And what about those times where you've said something and it's just completely fallen flat? Like, how does it feel? Do you feel like that cringe moment, or do you just kind of think, no, I'm a professional, this is it, this is part of it, like this is my failure, I learn from this for next time? Or do you still have that feeling inside where you want to go, ah?
Yeah, you want to do that, you definitely want to do that, but it's you have to just carry on. And it's not, I'm not going to pretend it's nice, but if you can there was one particular gig in London, quite a legendary gig, called Pear Shaped. Have you heard of Pear Shaped?
Not heard of anything that you mentioned.
No.
Sorry.
Well, that was kind of a joke. I didn't really expect you to, because it's kind of an in-joke for comedians.
Okay.
Pear Shaped is run by two phenomenally talented and lovely people, Brian Damage and Crystal, and they're such great comedians. It doesn't run anymore. They've spoken about bringing it back, but it marketed itself. Its tagline was London's second worst comedy club. And it was not uncommon to do a gig at Pear Shaped and every act would just die. There'd be no audience. Everyone there would just be other performers all just staring at their notes or just awkwardly at the floor. And if you can enjoy dying on stage, if you can enjoy doing badly, especially in an environment at Pear Shaped where doing badly is often encouraged, then I think you're going to be all right. But at the same time, it's all about balance. So you can't just think that dying all the time is a good thing. But you need to be able to deal with it when it does happen. So obviously you need to be doing well. You need to have your good gigs. You can't just be doing awful gigs all the time. Because at some point you've just got to think, hang on, this isn't quite working out. I need to do something different.
Yeah. I like that idea actually of enjoying doing badly, like rather than just want to turn away from it or escape, but just embrace it, because it is such a strong emotion, isn't it? Whenever you feel that embarrassment or cringe or whatever.
Yeah.
And what if you just decided to be like, oh well, I'm just going to enjoy the intensity of this emotion and feel my cheeks flush, and there we go. Like
but then if you can enjoy it, then there's a good chance that the audience may start enjoying it, because it will force you to just do something differently. You can't just carry on. Well, you can just carry on doing your material, but if you start to play around, then sometimes you can end up getting yourself out of trouble, and you can end up getting laughs, just because you've been forced to do something different.
That creativity. So on top of the ordeals, whether you enjoy them or not, you've also written about dealing with idiots at your gigs.
Oh, I thought you were going to say bowel movements.
Oh yeah, bowel movements too. Yeah. Yeah, maybe we can come to that later. But you talk about like people who either intentionally or unintentionally are rude or disruptive throughout your performance. And again, I think that most people in their daily life don't have that level of confrontation in their interactions with their friends, family, and you don't come across as a confrontational person at all. Like, how do you deal with those situations? Have you learned anything that would be helpful to share?
So we're talking hecklers, or just general hecklers, or particularly hecklers who want to cause trouble?
Oh, I didn't know there were categories. I know.
Oh yeah, there are different.
You said there were people who would talk and not really realize it, or there'd be people who would be deliberately like knobheads.
Yes, technical term.
Deliberate knobhead.
But most hecklers, they don't mean to be nasty. They just say the first thing that comes into their head after a few drinks. They just blurt something out, and you always have to remain in control. You can never lose your temper with a heckler, because then you've lost. You've probably lost if you get angry with them. You kind of need to remain in control and try and have some fun with it, and realize that you have the power. You've got the microphone, and you're also. So I don't drink before I go on stage. So that also gives you an edge. You've got all this adrenaline. They've had several pints, and you should be more sort of together than they are. So you should have an advantage. You've got the microphone, and you should also have a clearer head. And you're a comedian, so you should be able to think of funny things. So with hecklers, I always try and just have some fun with it. Just try and enjoy it. And it's some people do say I give hecklers a bit too much time, but I just enjoy playing around with them because it's fun and it's something different. It's very rarely the same heckler twice.
All right, so you appreciate the novelty maybe and the challenge.
Yeah, but sometimes you have to earn the right to completely shut them down. You can't just tell them to shut up and call them all sorts of names straight away. You kind of have to show the audience that you're playing around with them and you're in control. And then it reaches a point and you just have to say, no, that's enough, and shut them down. But no, you just have to have some fun with it, but show that the audience that you haven't lost your temper, because then that often just turns them against you.
And has anybody, after you've said, that's enough and you've tried to shut them down, has anybody continued to persist?
Yes, but then you have to get the audience on, and the audience almost always are on your side. So you can just get them to join in chanting at them and shouting at them. So that's power.
Yeah.
And then in the pub quiz show, being able to deduct points from people is a massive bonus when you're controlling hecklers, because you can just deduct points and they hate it.
Right, because they want to win.
They want to win, but you're deducting points for every heckle. So and that's also a lot of fun. especially when the audience get involved and start chanting to take points off.
Yeah. So I was going to ask if, being more assertive on stage has helped you like be more assertive in other areas of your life off stage, but the things that you've said, they don't quite apply in real life. It's not like when you're in an argument with someone, you can get everyone else around you to be like, just tell him he's wrong.
Yeah, you could give it a go, but it doesn't quite work the same. But I think it has, doing stand-up comedy certainly made me a more confident person, and it has it certainly changed me for the better. I think just made me more confident and knowing I can do things, and instead of just being held back by that lack of confidence that I did suffer from at university.
I guess maybe now you have that belief in yourself where you've been in so many situations and handled so many things, like you say, different every time. You kind of trust that I'm going to figure it out. It'll be all right.
Yep.
On top of the ordeals of public speaking and, putting jokes out there to be tested and deliberate knobheads in the crowd, you mentioned that you did quite a lot of gigs, at some point, sometimes 3 or 4 times a week. And I know in your blog, you said that you set yourself doing a target of around 150 a year, which is a lot of gigs, particularly if you have to like travel to them, stay in accommodation, sometimes really crappy accommodation, and like sometimes on little sleep. How do you stay so resilient when it's so physically demanding?
Because basically there's no other way. You either you either give up and go home, or you keep going. So there are 2 options. You either let it get to you and you quit, which those thoughts have been in my mind, but you just kind of have to keep believing it's going to get better, and often it does.
So when you say those thoughts have been in your mind, can you elaborate? Like, have you ever been close to just saying that's it, I've had enough?
Yeah. So when I moved to Manchester, I wasn't really doing enough gigs compared with London, partly because with a full-time job, you have to drive around a lot more in Manchester than you would in London. In London, you could just hop on the tube. So I kind of had a rule about doing gigs that I couldn't do gigs that were less than more than 2 hours away drive, because after work, that's if you're there for about an hour and a bit and you're driving for 2 hours either way, that's 5, sometimes 6 hours on the end of a working day. So wow. I couldn't really do too many of those long distance gigs every week. So it was because otherwise I'd just be exhausted and wouldn't be able to do my day job that actually pays more regularly. So that was, it's often when I've wanted to quit, is just when I've not been doing enough. And if you don't do enough gigs and the gigs you do aren't very good, then that kind of weighs on your mind a bit, because as I said, you need to, once you do a gig and it goes badly, you need to get back on stage and do another one as quickly as possible. But if the gaps are getting larger between them, then that's when there's thoughts of where you start questioning what you're doing with your life. But then it's often before Edinburgh Fringe that I've thought about quitting, and then Edinburgh Fringe happens and it goes amazingly well, and I think, all right, well, maybe I'll stick with it. But it comes back to just not doing enough.
Just putting in those hours and the practice. And is it that the Edinburgh Fringe, is it that I can't imagine it, like it's so intoxicating to be on stage and to have people enjoy you, enjoy your material, enjoy your creativity, that's enough of a pull just to keep you going? Yeah,
well, it helps making some decent money for the month as well, and it helps performing in front of audiences that actually appreciate what you do instead of just stare blankly. So yeah, that's been the one thing that's kind of kept me going, sticking with comedy with Edinburgh Fringe. But then in the last couple of years, it's also allowed me to travel around the world, so going to New Zealand and Australia and being able to cover the cost of the travel with comedy gigs. So that's not a bad way to live.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's the
Mhm.
dream come true, really, isn't it? Like basically getting to fly there for free and just do what you love and explore a new country, a new place. So one of the things that I really appreciate you being vulnerable about in your blog, and we kind of touched on this a little bit here, is your
Mhm.
no holds barred view of yourself as a comedian and your journey. And you've written a few times about failure, and I guess like your perception, or you might have felt that you failed after certain gigs, or with regards to critics reviews. And you mentioned about your own feelings of like not doing enough, so you talk about like
Mhm.
complacency and stagnation in your blog.
Mhm.
And well, I just wanted to say firstly, like the courage that it takes to write that and dissolve your ego is brilliant, so thank you for sharing. um
Well, thanks
and
for reading. I'm not sure if many other people do.
I've read so much, but like, why do you share these personal things about yourself? Your evaluation of yourself, your hopes, your dreams, how it's going. What do you hope to get as a result of sharing? Because we can write, like I write things in my diary, my private diary, but posting it in public for other people to see is completely different.
Yeah, well, this may surprise you. I do hold things back, so I don't put everything in my blog. It's kind of just it's a therapy, and so I feel better when I write stuff, and it just especially when it's about a particularly difficult experience, it just makes me feel better. But it also helps that very few people actually read it. So
I'm sure that's not true. What if more people did read it? What if all of a sudden, blog became really, really popular with thousands of hits a day? Do you think you would still be so honest? So
I think so, because that's just the way I write. That's just the way I enjoy writing. Because I really, because there is a bit of spin to an extent, but not the. Um, I try and avoid like too many details about specific places because there's a kind of the vagueness does provide some protection for for myself and people involved with it. If I've done a gig that hasn't gone very well, I often won't say where it is because then everyone will know where that is. But it's if it was to become successful, I mean, I I like failures, but success. Well, I can deal with that as well.
And you say that you hold things back from your blog, but I've got to say you don't hold back like deals with your bowels. And why do you share them? Is it just, I mean, I appreciate reading about it. I think it really humanizes someone when you hear that they've not had enough toilet paper nearby, or they're on the toilet like 2 minutes before they need to go on stage. I'm like, I've
Yeah,
been there.
yeah. It's maybe some people find it reassuring. To be honest, I don't exactly know. Why because it is a big part of my life, and it has, particularly in Edinburgh 2018. I mean, that was just a horrific experience. I don't know what was the matter with me. I was on the verge of checking myself into hospital, but it was awful. But it does make you feel better talking about it as well, and writing about it, and it just helps get you through. And it's if anyone is reading it and they feel slightly better about an awkward situation they've been in, then that's a good thing.
Yeah. I guess I feel like I don't know that I need to share, but just that I absolutely know where you're coming from. Like sometimes before particular like job interviews or presentations, even though I feel I've prepared, I've done everything, even though like mentally I feel like I'm confident, I'm fine, I can handle this, my body is just like, no, evacuate, this is awful, get out, this is no. And I have absolutely been in those places where you just can't wait to get off wherever you are. Or like I've been in one situation where I was waiting to be called into the interview room for my job interview, and I was just there like, do I say I need to go to the toilet now? What happens if I don't go? Can I go in time? The interview is literally going to start in 2 minutes, and it's just, yeah, bodies. So fun.
Yeah. So what happened there then? Were you able to go, or?
I didn't. I just trusted that I wouldn't go in the chair there and there.
That's very brave.
No, but I actually find like breathing it really does help me, slowing down my breath, not even deep breathing, but just really slowing down. Like, it's a very physiological thing for me, that even though mentally I'm not feeling stressed, my body is feeling stressed. So yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't have trusted my bowels to behave themselves in that situation.
I wanted to cover, because you've mentioned a few kind of philosophies, and I love your so many sound bites that I feel that we've got from this podcast already. And I just wanted to mention a few ones that you've written about in your blog that I really like. Mm-hmm. So you've said, with regards to failure, either you get bitter or you can keep trying to get better. It's just one vowel's difference. And, it's cheesy as hell, but I love cheese. And I think that's really nice. And then you've written something else as well, which is it's better to die on your ass and learn from it rather than coast along in a bubble of mediocrity. And I'm curious, like, what drives this desire for constant improvement and for pushing yourself to be out of this bubble of mediocrity, to be better?
Because otherwise, what are you going to do? If you don't get better, then you're never going to get where you want to be. So that's kind of what drives me on. Because I was coasting along on just material that I knew worked for too long, and then I just think I got a bit bored with it, just doing the same thing over and over again. And after a while, you do become a bit detached from it, and if you're bored with it, then you won't deliver it properly. Then the audience will be bored with it. So that kind of I think, as I recall, that specific bubble of mediocrity gig was when I was performing at the Comedy Store in Manchester, and I was doing an extended set. It was on a Sunday night, so it's not like the big weekends, but you still get a good crowd there, and it's still the Comedy Store in Manchester, and it just wasn't very good. It was just a bit flat, and you just want it to be better. So yeah, you need to always look for ways you can do things better, because I don't think you should ever be content, because that just makes you complacent.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like there's a Japanese word called kaizen, which is like this constant, never-ending improvement, and I feel like that's what I try and live by as well, just because it's more fun, I think, too. Mm-hmm. Like you do get bored, and you're like looking for novelty, looking for to see what you can do in your one and only life, basically, like a curiosity for me.
Yeah, and it's also, I apply that same concept to cooking as well, because even if I make a really good chili con carne, but I'm always, it is really good. But I'm always thinking every time has to be slightly different. I never do the same recipe twice. I always have to do something slightly different, just to because doing the same thing over and over again it does get boring. So you have to keep things fresh and interesting.
I'm curious about your chili con carne recipe now, and also how much you can change things in order for them to be different every time. Like, surely you only have a narrow parameter of ingredients by which you can mess around with, unless you add in like completely crazy things.
No, well, there's not a massive amount of maneuver for the chili con carne, but you kind of. So I add chocolate, dark chocolate, and lime as well, and then sometimes I'll like chop the carrots really finely. Sometimes I'll just add other things as well. I mean, it's sounding more boring the more I'm explaining it, but it's just doing things slightly differently and seeing how it works, just experimenting.
Do you blog about your chili con carnes in another platform?
I don't, but I could always do that.
Please do. I would definitely follow it. Are there any other life mottos or philosophies that you live by and would like to share?
I think you've probably got the golden one is don't get bitter, get better. I think that's a real important one, and just try and do what you enjoy as well, and have some fun, because if 2020 has taught us anything, it's that we take so much for granted, and once we are eventually out of lockdown, there's so much more living that we need to do. Just if you're miserable, try and do something about it.
Definitely. And how has, the previous year been for you with regards to coronavirus lockdown? You've gone from doing however many gigs a week and making people laugh and trying to better yourself, in that way that you like and how, and all of that's been taken away from you. Like, how have you been coping?
It's been all right. So I'm back home at my mum's, and I've got a dog here called Martha, and she's actually sleeping at my feet. She in my room. She follows me around everywhere, and so since March. So I got back from New Zealand on the 24th of March. It was the day after the country went lockdown. Somehow managed to get back Indiana Jones style and rolled underneath the door. And so since then I've been going for, so I'm from a town called Stroud in the southwest, so it's the countryside, and I'm surrounded by hills and woods and meadows and things. So I've been going for dog walks. I've been going about 3 miles every day with my dog since March. So that's really good for mental health, just getting out and seeing the countryside and getting plenty of exercise. But yeah, the other creative outlet, which I sent you a sample of, was the project I've been working on to keep me busy creatively, Ross Kemp the musical. So that's been good to have some sort of creative outlet.
That looked really fun. Yeah, you sent me, is it you singing and your friend doing the music? Is that what you said? Just singing about like Ross Kemp, he's a heart man.
It's my mate doing it. Yeah, that's a demo, so that's not ready. That's going to be released on single eventually. But it's so the track you heard, all the music, or the singing and the instruments were all played by my friend Rich Shillito, who's a very accomplished musician and very talented. And the plan is for me to play Ross Kemp in the actual production, and so I will shave all my hair off and be singing. Yeah. So so that's the plan. We were hoping to do it at Edinburgh Fringe this year, but I'm not entirely sure if it's going to go ahead. But we've made some good progress. But it's nice to have a creative outlet.
Yeah, and sorry, I just said because beforehand we were talking about how you've been growing your hair and haven't had it cut since March. So
yes.
It must be, a nice kind of getting ready to perform and get back into it again, like a really nice, like, symbol, metaphorical shedding the hair to play Ross.
Yes, so it comes back to birth and rebirth again, I suppose, doesn't it?
Birth and rebirth. Yeah, I like it.
Mm-hmm. And I will be also resembling a baby, a newborn baby with the shaven head. So, yeah.
I feel like I'm getting to newborn baby with the chub from lockdown nibbles, because it's so dangerous being in your house close to the fridge all the time. It's horrendous.
Well, I've been eating what I want, really, because I'm able to walk 3 miles every day with my dog. So that's a really good, it's quite good to have that, just not having to worry about putting on weight because I'm just walking it off every day.
Yeah, I think I need to do 6 hours walking in order to eat all the foods that I want to eat. So in the second part of the podcast, we kind of talk a bit more and take a bit more of an environmental sustainability focus. So Alex, what does the environment mean to you? Is it something that you care about? Is it something that you are active about?
Yeah, it is. I mean, I give three, not bragging or anything, I give £3 a month to the WWF to save the native rainforest.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, and no, it's something I've always, yeah, as I said in the email, I'm a bit of a hippie at heart. I do love the environment and I love nature, and especially growing up around the countryside, you do appreciate it all the more. So yeah, it is something I am genuinely passionate about. So yeah, I'm always trying to make sure I do all the recycling and turn off lights and other little things that do end up making some sort of difference. But yeah, there's also, the more you think about it, the more just such a massive challenge it is, because it's all the plastic in the oceans and melting of the ice caps. It does get a bit overwhelming the more you think about it. So you just got to concentrate on what you can do to make things better.
Yeah. And what is it about, you know, your relationship with the environment that has motivated you to act? So, you know, to give money to WWF or to do the recycling, like what is it? Why do you care about it?
Because it's gonna disappear unless it's protected. It's gonna just get worse unless something's done about it. Unless drastic action is taken, that all these amazing animals, I mean, so many animals could just become extinct. I mean, it's already happening, and it's the animals I feel sorry for, really, more than anything else.
So is that the kind of thing that motivates you, thinking about animals losing their habitat, their wildlife?
Yeah, I think so.
And you mentioned that you are a vegetarian as well. Is that because you because of this kind of love of animals?
Yeah, it is. And what put me off meat was, so there are two things. One was the horse meat scandal, and I was editing some news stories about all the things that all the processes, and I was reading about it, the way they kill animals for meat as well. And I think it's the thing. The more you think about it, the worse it actually seems. So if I hadn't have given it any thought, I may have continued to eat meat. But the other thing is that when I was best man for one of my best friends at his wedding, he had the reception on a farm, and I had stayed over. A few of us had camped. So I'd slept in my car where people had tents, and and I had to wait the next day for my friend and his wife to appear to clean stuff up. So I went to the farm shop to get some breakfast, and I got a sausage roll, and I was walking back to my car, and these little piglets came running up to the fence because they saw me with some food to say, "What have you got? What have you got?" And I looked at the sausage roll and I thought, probably one of your relatives, actually. So that made me think more about it, and so yeah, I've stopped buying meat, and it stops me eating it. But I do have relapses when I'm in Scotland and I'm drunk.
So did you eat that sausage roll when you
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Still ate it. I mean, I continued to buy meat for the next few years.
Yeah, well, I think it takes a while, doesn't it? I think for you to kind of, I don't know if it's build up the courage or just get going with something that you think about and you feel deeply about. Like, it can be quite scary or anxiety provoking sometimes, and it takes a bit of, for me as well, to kind of take the plunge and go for it. So thinking about what you've said and what matters to you with regards to animals and their habitats, I invite you, at your option entirely, to come up with something that you can do to act on that thing that you care about with the environment. And it doesn't have to be the biggest thing. It's not the thing that you think you should do, but it's the thing that feels kind of meaningful for you, perhaps. So you don't have to fix all the world's problems by yourself overnight. It can be big, it can be small, it can be temporary, it can be long lasting, but it's got to be something new that you're not currently doing, and something where it has like an effect. So you can say, you know, I've done this and I can measure this. And something where you've done it yourself rather than tell other people what to do, or give more money, for example, because we kind of learn from our own experience and learn from doing. So is there anything that kind of springs to mind that you can think about?
Well, when we were talking before the started recording, I just wrote down use my phone less, because that is, especially during lockdown, I do just I mean, that's not going to make a massive difference really, apart from charging, but if I set myself some hours when I don't use it, that would then help me do other things to just stop getting so consumed with what's on my screen. So I don't know if that's, I mean, it's not going to obviously save the world, but it will save me from wasting so much time. But I don't really know. It's tough. So I was hoping you'd be able to come up with something like an eco challenge, but also it's difficult at the moment to make changes in a way that you'd be able to, if things were as normal. So you can't really say you take more public transport because you're not really getting it at all at the minute. So yeah, I'm open to suggestions, but use my phone for like 2 hours. Like, if I could say 2 hours a day when I'm just not using it at all, turn it off, then I think that would make a big difference to my own procrastination levels. And I think it's that kind of discipline, isn't it, of just saying, right, this is a cut-off point, I'm not going to use it between these hours.
Yeah. But
I don't know, that's not the best.
No, I love that idea. I love that idea. And actually, I do remember reading somewhere, I can't quote it now, but it was something around the CO2 of using your phone. Like, there is a direct kind of environmental, the more you use it. So yeah, no, that's a perfect thing that would be a great challenge to try. So would you do you use your phone when you go out dog walking?
Nope.
Okay. So you already don't do that. So you're already like fully enjoying nature there.
Yes.
So it would be okay.
But it's just checking it every few minutes. Oh, I wonder if I got a message now. And because a lot of the time I haven't got any messages, so I don't even know why I'm checking it. So, but it's just there. It's like an omnipresent distraction. So if I could say between these hours, I won't check my phone for messages, or avoid going on the internet on my phone between this number of hours, these times, then I think that's doable, and it would actually have quite a big benefit on me personally of just stopping me getting distracted. And it does also restrict creativity, just time spent on the phones.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a complete love-hate relationship with my phone, and I watched that documentary on Netflix as well, The Social Dilemma, and before I knew I was procrastinating and not using my time effectively, and then I watched it and then I was like, oh my gosh, and it has like a extra kind of evil effect, like these companies are profiting from us losing our attention and not being able to do and fulfill the things that we want to do, and they're benefiting from it, and that you still find yourself pulled back to your phone, like you say, just checking it like for no reason at all. There's nothing going on. Okay, so if we are to define it into a bit of a goal, you say like if we make it smart, is there something that you can say, so turn it off between a certain number of hours or just for X number of hours a day? What's the specific kind of thing that feels doable for you?
Well, I'm just thinking about when I'm already thinking of a way out of it. So I've been doing freelance journalism, and I suppose I may need my phone for that. So unless I'm doing using it for work. I suppose that's kind of, I can get out of it that way. But I suppose it's switching off the mobile data on my phone, because that will solve a lot of problems. Because I accidentally turned that off once, and I thought there was something. I thought the internet was down for O2. But I just switched off my mobile data. But and then when I was writing shows, I used to just turn my phone off and turn the internet off just so I could focus on it. So yeah, I'm acutely aware of just how much of a distraction it is. But if I can set myself some rules of when I'm using it, I think that would make a big difference. But yeah, certainly over lunchtime, that's doable between the hours of 1 and 2. So it could even be from when I go on my dog walk to after lunch, to 2 or 3 hours.
Okay. So turn off your mobile data from the moment you get back from your dog walk to after lunch.
Or when I so if I turn it off at, so let's say 10 a.m.
Okay.
Turn off the mobile data at 10 a.m. Because I will be able to check my emails on my computer. So that means I won't be missing anything.
Yeah.
That may be important, such as invitations to be on podcasts.
Of course.
So I could turn off the mobile data at 10 a.m. and then turn it back on at about 3 p.m. So that'd be 5 hours without mobile data.
And that sounds amazing. And how long do you think you can do it for? Like a week, a month? What feels
I could easily do it, because that's the thing. Once I start something, I can stick to it. But often the most difficult thing is actually starting it.
Yes.
In the first place. But yeah, from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. I reckon I could last a month.
A month. Okay.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So do you think then that we could catch up in about a month's time to find out how it's gone and what's happened?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Cool. Oh, this is super exciting. Oh God, you're making me look at myself now with your with the challenge, and also being a vegetarian, and also even just kind of blogging about myself and my own journey. I think there's quite a lot that I'm gonna have to think about, and yeah, you'll probably see if you subscribe to the podcast, you'll be like, well, I've started this challenge too now because Alex has inspired me, blah, 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 blah.
Well, don't blame me if it all goes wrong. I just want to say, if you start writing too much detail about bowel movements and toiletry habits, then I'm not going to be responsible for that.
Well, I think I will take your advice and learn from the failure if it does go wrong, because learn from the failure and enjoy it.
There you go.
And yeah, it's been wonderful having you on the podcast and learning about how you do such difficult things that us mere mortals, I think, would really crumble at, with regards to, public speaking, repeated failures, ordeals, and deliberate dickheads. So it's been really, really fascinating, Alex. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me on. But yeah, as I said in that initial email, there may actually be something genuinely wrong with me. So I don't know that.
I don't think so. Or if it is, embrace it because it's working. So I've basically decided that I'm going to pivot my whole podcast and interview only comedians from now on, because I had so much fun with Alex. I loved his playfulness and experimentalness, and this idea of testing something out, trying it, reviewing it, tweaking it, and testing it again, whether that's jokes or chili con carne. I also loved the simplicity of some of his answers. I asked him, how do you stay so resilient? And he said, you just kind of have to. And sometimes I think that I overthink things when actually the answer is pretty simple. And perhaps my thinking and overthinking and exploring is just procrastinating and making an excuse. I also love this idea of enjoying failing. What if it is something that we just fully embraced it for what it is, another part of the human experience, and rather than trying to avoid it or minimize it or get through it as quickly as possible? I mean, I could go on and on with my kind of key insights and takeaways, but I think what I'll do is come back to some of these topics through some solo episodes later on. I just wanted to say that I found the article I was talking about with regards to carbon use and mobile phones. And it turns out there is a whole movement around digital sobriety as a method to reducing our carbon footprint, which is super interesting. And I will definitely be exploring this in another episode. I've put the link to the article in the show notes, though, so check it out for a very interesting read. My favorite quote from the article is with regards to worldwide internet traffic. Okay, so pornography accounts for 1/3 of video streaming traffic, and this generates as much carbon dioxide as the country of Belgium does in a year. Wow, that's huge. That is, my mind is blown. Yeah. So yeah, I'm definitely gonna, I'll try and find a guest, actually. I think that would be really interesting to interview them about digital sobriety. Oh, and for my non-UK listeners who don't know who Ross Kemp is, he is an actor, and how do I describe him? He's a proper, bald, hard man. Like, he talks like this. He was really famous on a soap we had, EastEnders in the UK, if you heard of EastEnders. So yeah, I think the Ross Kemp the musical is going to be hilarious. Lastly, inspired by Alex and in the spirit of continuous improvement, after the episode, I reflected to him some things that I thought I could have done better as a host, and invited him to share his reflections about me as well. And I invite you, dear listener, to do the same. So come on over to my Facebook page, TSL Untethered, This Sustainable Life Untethered, or I'm on Instagram at alison.untethered, and yeah, share your thoughts. How could I be better? How can I learn from my mistakes better for the future? And or just come and say hello. I'd love to hear from you and your thoughts about the show and the episode. Please subscribe to the podcast, leave a review if you like it, and do not forget to go over to alexlove.co.uk to get more of his blog and follow him on Twitter at @thisAlexLove for his funny musings. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.